Hello everyone, my name is Kylie, and today we're going to talk about one of those words in music that can have multiple meanings, texture. This kind of texture isn't the kind that we feel with our hands, but rather one that we hear with our ears. Texture is a different way to describe the organization of sound in music. Music is often said to have layers, like Shrek says an onion does, or many different parts going on at once. They can be affected by timbre, rhythm, tempo, melody, or harmony. Because it's not an exact term, there are many ways we can describe texture based on how the song sounds. The simplest description is how many voices or parts the texture has. For example, a choir song may be written for SATB. That is soprano, alto, tenor, or bass. And those 4 parts would make up the whole texture. If there are not many parts playing at once, we could describe it as thin. Whereas if there are multiple parts playing at one time, like an orchestra, it might be thick. Sometimes the ensemble may be playing notes that are the same or close together, which we call a closed or tight texture. Other times, it may be very wide and spacious, meaning that the parts are stretched out a little further. If you were to play this texture on the piano, your fingers would be far more stretched out instead of on top of one another. As musicians, we can use these general terms, but we often prefer more specific words to describe texture. There are 4 main textures, each with its own characteristics and style. The first of these, and the first to exist in documented history, is monophony. For a monophonic texture, there is one single melodic line. This line can be doubled by multiple people singing or playing, but the key is that all sounds are in unison or together. The first and easiest example of monophony is Gregorian chant, where there is only one line happening at once. If you were to add more than one instrument or voice singing or playing the same melody, for example, a crowd of people at a sporting event all sang the national anthem, it would still be monophony as long as they sang the line in unison. The next type is homophony, where all the parts move at the same time with the same rhythm, even if they are harmonically different. A popular example of this texture is a hymn you may find in a church hymnal. When you look across the page, you can see it is usually written in 2 lines with 4 parts, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, that all sing different notes but move at the same time. Here you can see that I'm demonstrating the notes moving at the same time. An extension of homophony is the melody and accompaniment, one of the most widely used textures today. Here, the parts are different and don't always move at exactly the same time, but are still meant to be similar sounding. The third texture is polyphony, where all parts are different and move at different times. It is not so common today, but it was very popular in the Renaissance period in the 1400s and 1500s. During this period, a composition technique called counterpoint was used to create music. In counterpoint, each part has its own distinct melody line that combines together to form an overall sound. It's often difficult to follow all parts at once with your ears, but you can usually hear similarities in text and pitch between parts, even if the lines are different. The last texture, heterophony, is hard to define and even more difficult to pinpoint. Heterophonic music is characterized by a melody with an additional voice or part that essentially plays the melody at the same time as the original melody, but strays from the line at certain points. An example of this would be Johann Sebastian Bach's unsrer Macht, ist nicht, getan, in which the oboe and soprano play the same core melody for the most part, but they split and the oboe has a few extra notes in between the soprano line. So why do we learn about texture in music? Does it have a purpose, or is it just another fact for us to memorize? Well, texture works like a tapestry. Each voice or layer is a thread that is woven together to create a bigger picture, or in this case, the overall sound. This bigger picture is what helps us describe, analyze, and categorize the sounds we hear. So now that you're an expert in musical texture, take a screenshot of this page and go see what textures you can find in your favorite songs.